Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can see me and hear me. Obviously, we don't have that interaction as we have speaking to each other face to face. So I can only rely on comments that you provide to me on the chat. My name is Jarosław Rusek. I work in Motorola Solutions. I'm a finance director responsible for running Motorola Solutions Finance Operations Center, which translates into shared service organization. Our organization spans across different locations. I am based actually in Krakow in Poland, but I have also a team under myself, a quite significant team based in Malaysia, in Penang. And interestingly, I spent there in my career very nice 3 years of my working time in Motorola. For your information, this webinar is my first webinar, so I apologize for any glitches that may happen throughout. It's not as easy to talk to people when you don't see them. I'm just realizing that. And for your information, that event is being recorded, and also it will take approximately 30 minutes, the presentation, with active chat. So if you have any questions in the meantime, as I present, please feel free to ask those. And we can always have additional approximately 15 minutes of Q&A after the presentation. The materials I'm going to cover talk about business services sector in Poland and a little bit in general, and are based on my experience, but also some of the industry data. So if you don't mind, let's move on. I'll start with the topic, and I hope you find it interesting. So first of all, I would like to give you a few facts just to set the scene in terms of the business services sector. So if you think about, probably most of you are familiar what it is, right? So business services sector is a sector that hosts various business activities pooled in one central location that work for the benefit or performed for the benefit of the whole organization. So if you think about like concept in past where companies had offices in various geographies, and every office had to be self-sufficient, so had to perform operations to maintain the business. So every office had to have their own person that would call the customer to collect money. Every person had to have an accountant. Every office had to have an accountant. Every office had to have a person that would pay money to the vendors. The companies transitioned from that concept into actually pooling those activities in one place, central location, to benefit from standardization, centralization, and hence the concept of a shared service or a business service environment. Currently, if you look at the numbers, business services sector employs over 300,000 people in Poland. It's quite a significant sector. If you think about the entire economy, those employees represent over 5% of the total business sector employment in the country. The sector has gone through significant growth. I remember when I was attending various conferences, and that number was closer to 200,000, and people were thinking, when it's going to end, right? I mean, are we going to reach 250? Maybe we're lucky with 300,000. And here we are in 2020, towards end of the year, with such a high number and with very bright perspective in terms of the growth rate, right? So the sector is expected to grow from this year to next year, additional 7%. So next year we're going to have probably over 350,000 employees based out of Poland, and maybe more. We don't know what how pandemic has influenced that trend. I'm based out of Krakow. Obviously, I work from home, as probably many of you. So I forgot maybe to add at the start that if there are certain people or animals entering my room, I apologize in advance for that. I hope my dog doesn't enter and disrupt our webinar. But I'm based in Krakow, right? Motorola Solutions is based out of Krakow, and in Krakow, this sector employs nearly 80,000 people. If you think about the scale, right, 80,000 people, Krakow inhabitants amount to approximately 800,000 people some estimates say it's with suburbs, it's probably closer to 1 million. So 80,000 would represent roughly 10% of the population, right, of the population of the city. So that's very significant sector, industry, business for the city itself, not only for Krakow, but for the entire Polish economy, right? So that's the significance. And maybe just a kind of as a note, a number of different companies, right, operating as shared service centers. It's over 1,000, 1,500 in Poland, with that number growing year on year. I was supposed to talk about the changes, right? So I did mention about sort of this initial concept where companies were employing and having the activities hosted in their home locations, scattered across the offices, right? Probably the first benefit why companies wanted to move to shared services environment was a labor arbitrage. Labor arbitrage is actually a difference in cost of labor, cost of employing a person in one location versus the other. So obviously you know that salaries of people in Poland are still lower than in other countries of Europe, Western Europe, or United States of America. And companies use concept of shared service, or use the concept still using, to reduce their operating costs by moving jobs from one location to another where they can employ people at the lower salary. And that was the main reason why this concept originated and kind of why that boom started. Obviously, the jobs that were transitioned at that point of time were very basic, transactional, right? They were requiring very low skills and offering very low development. And were very kind of procedural, right? So you had at every step defined what you would do. It doesn't mean that we don't do those jobs right now. Obviously, yes. But as the industry has been moving towards more advanced, also the complexity of the jobs has gone up. So probably roughly 10 years ago, there was additional concept introduced of global business services. So seeing the success of that first sort of model, very basic, and seeing as well accumulation of the knowledge within those organizations, expertise in the teams, people could see the benefits of moving more functions over to that shared service location. So I'm talking here about finance transformation because that's the function that I'm sort of within. But that doesn't have to actually be the only example, right? So let's say if companies first were moving finance jobs, they then realized, okay, we can maybe move something else. We can move procurement operations. We can move sales operations. We can move other functions, R&D, sales support as well, right? And benefit from the same scale and same sort of labor arbitrage. So cost of labor difference between the locations. And when we moved to global business services, the jobs became more advanced, requiring different skill set. And there was another concept introduced of global process ownership, because if you think about companies centralizing a lot of activities in one location, in one team, that team suddenly becomes an expert into how those activities should be performed. If I have a team of 10 people that performs, I would say, an activity of booking an invoice or calling a customer, and we are the only 10 people doing that in the entire company, we are becoming over the time an expert because we know how to do it best and best, right? And we learn from the other colleagues on the market as well. So we become process expert and then a process owner. So we are able to determine how the process should be designed and improved across the entire business, across the entire company. And what's next, right? It doesn't mean that GBS, Global Business Services concept, has gone away, but companies now are looking into something a little bit different, right? Digital Center of Excellence, it's probably not the phrase that is widely used. I encountered that in a few places in the media. So what it means? I mean, digital, right? So it's thinking about usage of artificial intelligence, robotics, blockchain in the operations. center of excellence is actually, apart from being an expert, being as well kind of more of a process owner and being able to decide to a greater level across the entire company how the processes should be run, and decide and using actually the data to make those decisions. Well, previously, very often, people working in shared service environment were executing based on what other people were telling them, people from home location, right, from HQ. We're moving to a concept where people actually within the shared service environment possess enough skill set, knowledge, and access to right technology to be able to determine what business decisions should be made. And as well, if we think about concept of shared service, it used to be kind of more of a back office environment, which wasn't visible to external parties that the company works with. Nowadays, we're shifting towards more front office processes, where we can interface with customers, we can interface with vendors in various ways to generate companies' revenues, companies' income. That process has started, and definitely different companies are in different place within that process, but it's inevitable that pool of expertise and the talent of employees within those organizations will be pushing them even further towards the maturity and that knowledge growth. If I think about actually what does it mean from my perspective as a finance individual, and what has it meant actually over those years. If I think about my organization, we started with fairly basic processes that we transitioned from various locations across the world, accounting, within accounts payables, focusing on booking the invoices, calling the customers, right? Producing reports. It doesn't mean that we don't do it right now, but as we have matured, we have taken much more ownership within that process. We've become an expert, and apart from doing what we used to do in past, we do it better, much better. But also we are accountable for that. We are not just accountable for executing, but we're accountable for the outcome of that process. And the other thing that has changed, and maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, if you look at sort of bottom of the slide, talking about enablement. So enablement is actually what makes us successful from the other parts of the organization. So previously, if you think about moving basic activities, doing those basic activities, what we just needed is working laptop or a PC, access to network, and that's it, right? People had to figure out themselves what to do differently, what to do better, how to do those repetitive tasks faster and faster. Nowadays, that's not sufficient. In order to improve processes, we need intelligence coming from outside of our teams. We need access to a quality organization. We need a quality assurance process. We need to have skill set in robotics, data mining, and data analytics. So you can see that basically what we brought initially, which everyone thought, okay, this is just like a factory, right, where people just repetitively do certain tasks, that has evolved to quite complex operations that, beside maybe doing those kind of basic things still, they require much more skill set and thought than they used previously. And what does it mean to me as an employee, or our organization, our employees? So we're previously, as I mentioned, right, we're asked to do more, to do quicker, to do more accurately, and that was fine, right? We're judged based on that. Nowadays, it's not sufficient. We're moving from transactional execution and excellence to the process ownership. So we have to learn, and we have to actually demonstrate business partnering skills. We have to be good collaborators, working with people from different functions, different cultures, backgrounds, different regions, to be successful, we have to drive change. We cannot wait anymore for someone to tell us what we need to do. We need to be change agents actually and propose those changes within the scope of what we do, but as well influence the rest of the organization and demonstrate basically what I mentioned before as well, which is kind of something called process leadership. If I go from sort of maybe high level down to the bottom of what it means for a particular employee, those people of you that joined that meeting and have been involved or working in that environment, have been involved in transitions, probably transitions of processes from sort of remote locations over to shared service environment, probably encountered situations where they were transitioning those processes from people that have been performing those roles for a number of years, right? Probably even till their retirement. The processes that have been stagnant over the years. I'm generalizing here because it wasn't the case, in probably for everyone, but there were many cases like that. Now today, once the process moves to organization like a shared service, it undergoes through much more change than it used to before at much higher pace. So we no longer wait till someone retires, right? I mean, most of people that work in shared service centers are in their 20s. We would wait probably another 30, 40 years till someone retires, right? So we live till someone moves to another role, is promoted, leaves the company. How long it takes? A year, 2, maximum 3. Then another person with a new perspective comes in to give fresh outlook, fresh ideas in terms of how things should be done. And it doesn't mean that what used to be done before was done wrongly. No, it just kind of everyone has a different approach. Everyone is a different individual and has influence on the process. So the pace has dramatically increased. So that's kind of a segue, right? If I was talking about the changes in the industry, the requirements it puts on the teams and people, and how the daily work looks like and looked before, to another sort of part of my presentation. Why is it happening, and what's sort of accelerating the pace that the industry has been observing? A few years back, when I was going through some materials, looking for some, I would say, clues to one of my presentations, I kind of read a very good article about VUCA world, right? So probably you have heard the term VUCA. It's an acronym. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's what described our modern world, right? So volatility, it's a speed of change in the industry, market, in the world in the general. So probably many of you have observed, and I hopefully demonstrated that a while back, that changes recently have become much more rapid. We are faced with changes basically to our daily routines, daily lives, the way we work, and no one can expect, right, at what pace the changes will go. We can only think that the pace will increase. What does it mean? We cannot use very often past experience to predict the future. The plans that we put together to determine what we want to do in future become outdated very quickly. In addition to that, we observe growing uncertainty. We don't know in which direction the changes will go. The extent to which we can confidently predict the future is fairly low in some of the cases. If we know what's going to happen, very often we don't know when it's going to happen. Or if we know answers to those two questions, we don't know why those things, for example, happen actually. So that creates a lot of different problems for us, right? Because we cannot predict what's going to be around the corner. And two other sort of letters, right, within that acronym, which is complexity, ambiguity, describe that the reality that around us is very complex. Number of issues, factors, numbers we have to take into account is very often huge, and they all are very often they are all interrelated. So if one thing changes, it impacts the other one, and the other one's a domino effect. And it leads to us actually taking much more time to make decisions in terms of what we want to do. Ambiguity, we can see a picture, but I can see the picture black. Someone else may see it kind of in white, and someone else may see it in gray. It's difficult to interpret facts. And that sort of impacts in terms of as well how we can read the signals coming from the environment. Something that I use here like best practice, one size fits all these kind of schedules and models that we used in past are no longer valid, because what is good for someone, it's not good for the other person. So what can we do living in such a kind of dynamic world, right? In terms of volatility, so the pace of changes. My advice, and obviously it's consistent with what I've been seeing, we just have to get ready for the change. If we cannot avoid it, we have to embrace it, and we have to prepare for it. We as organizations, but also we as employees. What does it mean to get prepared? We may actually invest in learning new skills. We may develop the area that may be actually our weakness. Could be learning a new language. Could be maybe going to a course to learn something new. But maybe as well actually may require us moving to a location that will give us more opportunities in the future, for example. So kind of if I look back at my career, I try to actually embrace the change in a way that it helps me to grow professionally and also personally. And whenever I was offered new opportunities, I looked at what it gives to me. I didn't look at it as a threat of, for example, my job evolving or me moving into a new role, but I always thought, what can I learn from it? Uncertainty, if we don't know what's around us, let's try to understand the environment around us. Let's try to, before we start moving forward, let's try to stop and think about actually what needs to be done and how it should be done. I talked about complexity. So complexity that cannot be understood by us. We cannot be experts in everything, and probably you can see right now that the number of topics that you encounter in your daily life, either at work or in personal life, has gone up exponentially, and there's so-called information overload. How to deal with it? I framed it very, very kind of briefly here. Join forces, right? So use the expertise of people around you to help you make the best decision that can happen. You cannot be expert, you cannot know everything, but build a network around you to help you succeed. If we all work and collaborate between each other, and that I refer to the skill that was required from us, right, in this environment, that will make us more successful. In terms of ambiguity, that comes with help a concept of being agile. We heard about agile programming, and basically agility in life and agility in approaching different situations professionally and personally is as well very well seen in such environment, because you can experiment. You don't have to go from the start to finish to realize at the end that actually the actions that you planned and you executed on deemed to be unsuccessful. You move one step, you see whether it's taking you forward. If it doesn't bring you to a success, you step back and try to find another route. So experimenting, building hypotheses about what we want to do, how we want to do things, and testing them it's a key to the success. And what does it mean for us, right? For people and for myself, for all of you. I would like to kind of use maybe an example that was published by LinkedIn some time ago. And because it was published some time ago, it nearly became outdated. Because if you look towards the right about the jobs we can only imagine, actually probably they exist, many of them exist already. But anyway, right, so the point of it is that the change, we don't have to be afraid of the change, because if we think about, okay, if I do certain activities right now, and that, for example, because of robotics, artificial intelligence, they become outdated and not needed anymore, what does it mean for me, right? Okay, if I become stagnant, if I don't evolve, that would be a risk. But if I keep up to date, if I develop, if I try new things, then there will be something else that probably my skill set, my abilities can be used in the future. So if you think about, obviously, the progress, technological progress over the time, the jobs we had 12 years back have disappeared, many of them, right? But on the other hand, there are many jobs that have been recently created and enabled careers for many people like us. You can see even in the country, in our country, wider in Europe, there are many industries that are in decline, but there are many industries as well that are actually booming at the same time, right? So if we are able to switch, learn new skills, and see, kind of look at the trends and observe where we can be useful, where our competencies can be useful, that's a vital skill, and that's what we should do. Because obviously there will be jobs that we are not aware of right now that will give us employment in 10 years, 20 years time. As you can see, we may be rocket designers, we can be pilots of spacecrafts, we may not be driving cars, right? We might be piloting spaceships to the moon or to the planet Mars. And kind of maybe as a wrap up to the presentation, change is inevitable. It's gonna happen. So let's get ready. And how do we get ready? As I mentioned before, we have to continuously develop ourselves. We have to follow the trends, especially in the area of new technologies. We have to invest in soft skills, because soft skills will take us further. So collaboration, leadership could be named as a few of them, and developing your passions. I went to a University of Krakow, Economics University of Krakow some time ago, and I met one person that was attending accounting courses there. And that person asked me a question, actually talking to me about developing the passions and following what your heart tells you, rather than actually what maybe sometimes your mind tells you what to do. And he asked me about, okay, I have been doing this course for a number of years. I'm okay at doing that, right? But I'm not excelling. I'm not much better than the others. So I don't think I'm going to be successful. But I'm thinking about kind of doing X and Y activity. So what do you think? I asked him, what do you think, right? Is it something that you're going to enjoy? Something that's going to actually, when you wake up every day, it's going to tell you, hey, this is great. This is something what I would like to do. He said, yes, so just follow, do it. He thanked me after the course. I don't know whether actually he decided on shifting sort of his interest. But that's what I would actually suggest for you to consider, right? Be the best at what you do and do what you want to do. Follow your passions, invest in soft skills, understand the trends around you so that you can anticipate what's going to happen and we are able to adjust, and try to continuously develop yourself. So that's probably all what I wanted to cover today. I hopefully touched on briefly what I wanted to pass on to you. Probably that's a moment for you to ask me any questions you may have on chat. So there is a question about which language is best to pursue to start working in sort of shared service environment. I think the language that you're interested in, right? I would like to probably expect someone to start learning Norwegian or Swedish just because actually it pays the best money, right? I think if you have passion for Latin countries, start learning Spanish, because then if you do it for your passion, then you're gonna be really good at it, right? And you can use it for your benefit. And if you think about your skills, right, the language skills, because that skill will take you to a certain language skill, will just take you to a certain level. So you have to look a little bit more broadly and actually see what else around the language can add value to you as an employee in that environment, right? Maybe if you know Spanish very well, or any other language, right? Could be German, could be French. What additional competences I have that can bring me forward? Is it something in accounting? Is it something in customer services? Is it something in programming? Maybe, I don't know. So just combining those skill sets will make you more successful. In terms of handling changes in work environment, frequent changes. I'm probably the wrong person to ask this question because I somehow have this natural ease to handle changes. I try not to worry too much, right, about actually what's going to happen. I try not to worry about what I don't have influence about. For example, I don't worry whether my dog walks through the door and then starts barking. I mean, I did all my best to secure the door, and if he storms in, what can I do? I can only apologize, you guys. So try not to worry about things that you don't have influence at. And what you have influence at, try to control it. So thinking about myself, right? I cannot have influence about something happening around me in my environment, but I had influence to invest to prepare for that webinar, which I did. Probably not as much as I would like to, but I found hopefully enough time to prepare for it. So as you get ready for the change, it will be easier for you. And try to understand the change. Try to understand what it means for you, because not all the changes are bad, basically, and some of them just happen and they have no impact on you or your team or your personal life. In terms of another question, right? So what is valued by foreign investors within sort of that industry? I think if I can put it very bluntly, right? To me, it's intelligence of people. People, as I mentioned, used to invest in Poland because of labor arbitrage, because we could do jobs at the lower cost than elsewhere. But it's not driving those decisions anymore. It's driving some of it, but the expectations are much higher. So it's actually us being able to do things better, improve processes, make better decisions, and collectively as an organizations improve how business is being done. So that's probably what's being valued right now. We talk about cost arbitrage, yes, but on the other hand, people look at knowledge, expertise, and skill set of people within that environment. So let me just browse through the questions. They keep coming up, which is great. So what advice I would give to someone just beginning his adventure in finance, right? What I would say, enjoy what you do. Sometimes it's difficult to enjoy, right? If you do the same basic job, probably kind of, I mean, for you may not be basic, right? But if you look later from that perspective, may actually look basic over and over again. So if you keep booking journal entries, if you keep reconciling the accounts day after day, and seems boring, try to see what can you do within what you do right now today to go past that point, to move to something more interesting, right? So try to excel in what you do, because if you are better than the others, you'll get noticed. And if you get noticed, that will definitely help you in your career, right? Obviously, people would like to work with people that are better than the others and that are nice to work with. So if you were that person, then just focus on doing that, right? And don't be average. I mean, I would like to ask you, everyone that's looking for advice, don't be average. You can be average, right, if you're looking for average results. But if you'd like to have something more out of your career, try to excel in what you do. Whatever you do, if you cannot excel because you don't find what you do interesting, maybe just try to find something interesting so that you could excel, right? Because you should think about your career not in prospect of 1 or 2 years, but in perspective of 10, 20 years. So that do something that actually you think may be beneficial for you in 10 or 20 years, right? That will take you where you want to be in 10 or 20 years. I'm being asked as well, what soft skills should we invest? If I look right now at the teams I work with and people I work with, I appreciate probably the most ability to collaborate. So ability to work seamlessly with each other. As I mentioned, in the current environment, we cannot solve all problems of the world ourselves. We have to rely on expertise, on support of other people. If we will be acting solely based on our skills and pretending that we can do everything to make it a success, we're gonna fail sooner than later. So collaboration, I think, is probably the skill that I value the most, and being able to utilize resources around you. If you don't know what to do, how to do things, ask your manager, ask your colleague, go to different other resources that may help you, right? So be collaborative and be resourceful. So be able to use resources around you for the benefit of yourself and for the organization. The other questions that come from you are around sort of the skills that may be dominant and required from people in 10, 20 years, right? In skills we should invest. So I think I did mention collaboration, resourcefulness, but the other thing that I think it's also important is problem solving. So as I mentioned earlier, people like to work with people that help them to make their job easier, to solve their problems. So if you're the person easy to work with, that can help to solve problems, that has innovative approach, I think that's going to make you successful, right? So I think the skills that will always remain valuable on the market will be collaboration, will be resourcefulness, will be problem solving. If I would invest in those three, and obviously being able to understand the world around us. So be proficient in understanding the in technology that's around us, because technology is an enabler. It's a tool we can use to make things work and make things better. And maybe the last one that I would take is around the roles, positions that will be most important, sort of within finance, business in 2030. I mean, I'd love to know the answer to that question, right? But I think I would go back to what I was talking about earlier, right? It's kind of ability to connect the dots and to draw conclusions and provide analysis and recommendations based on the information around you, right? So anything about analytics and making decisions, those are the roles that would be probably very, very, very kind of in demand, very high in demand in years to come. Any expert knowledge gets outdated very quickly. if we are an expert in certain tools, systems, those systems will be replaced in a number of years. If you think about being expert in programming language, right, they evolve very quickly. So people that used to know the language that was used 10 years ago may not be used now, maybe it's not used in 5 years' time. So the pace is very fast there, right? So the same goes for business and for finance. So I think where you can add value is the analysis, decision making, and that's never gonna get outdated. Another one maybe about it's all about skills, right? It's very interesting. But that's a topic for the webinar anyway. So people what skills are expected or recommended for people that would like to develop themselves as leaders or an experts? Because probably there are two different routes, right, that professional careers can go to. I think as leaders, to me, there are very general skills. It's kind of either myself as an expert or leader have to possess, and I spoke about those, right? I think leader role is a little bit more, I would say, difficult, right? Because not only you have to deliver an outcome to make projects successful, deliver business results, but you cannot influence everything. You don't do it yourself. You have to rely on the team. So it makes it a little bit more tricky, right? So I think anything any leadership skills that are valid right now, that are around managing people and have been valid managing people in past, will be valid in future. I think what I would add, perhaps, right, is being flexible. We as leaders recently have been faced with lots of, I would say, I'll call it challenges, right? Moving to an office environment definitely put a stress on the organizations. I cannot talk to my team face to face anymore. I talk to them as I talk to you, but obviously the difference is they can talk back. You cannot talk back to me, right? But we use video, we use voice. So the communication has changed, and we still need to maintain certain level of cohesion, of team integrity in this kind of complex environment. And we don't know what sort of challenges we're gonna be thrown at in future. Maybe even worse than what we're going through right now, right? So we may be managing completely remote teams from different parts of the world, facing time zone differences, cultural differences, etc. Right? So as leaders, I think what we need to do is to be ready for change, even more than our employees, and be very flexible. All right. So I think we are close to the time where we should finish the presentation and the webinar. If there are no more other questions from you, I would like to sincerely thank you for staying 45 minutes with me. I hope that webinar was beneficial for you, and you could learn a little bit from my experience and what I try to pass on to you. And hopefully we meet up again, either online or perhaps face to face. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.